Stop towers in the distance, riders cross the blasted moor against the horizon. Fickle promises of treaty, fatal harbingers of war, tall horizons. Surge across the marshy mud landscape until the meaning is forgotten. Hood masks the eager face, skin stretched and sallow, headlong into the chilling night, as swift as any against the flagstones, fingers scrapping at the lock, craving protection. Sanctuary crooks the voice are strangled by the shock of its rejection. Shot the ball echoes of all frightful memory intrude in the silence. What a crawl against the snow. Dark loom the gallows.
saxophone definitely is a highlight for me.
You stole. There was a telepathy. You stole something. You stole it. I stole
Absolutely amazing. It's very rare to come across music
Yeah.
like this. The lyrics are more or less dark, intense.
I know. Too dark. Too dark for my liking.
I love the music in this one. Absolutely amazing. If
Hands down.
they literally left out the lyrics on this
Yeah.
one, it would have been awesome.
Seriously.
This would have been a masterpiece straight away. It would have been one of the best songs I've heard this year. But sadly, because the lyrics, once again, they mean well. Van de
How
Graaff,
it
I'm
too
sure.
dark.
When artists like Van de Graaff Generator, Metallica, Megadeth, yada yada yada, all those artists who write about war and all the ill effects of war, the harmful effects of war, I am sure they all mean well. But then most of them are also dying of cancer, so you wonder why. In a way, maybe it's a wrong thing to say.
Why? Why? If they're dying of cancer, so why?
Yeah,
Why
anyway,
is it a wrong thing to say?
When we, I've read a lot of books. It's something I don't really talk about, at least not in the last 3 years or so. I don't think I mentioned it. But because I myself I don't read books much. I listen to audiobooks, I read blogs, I do a lot of reading still for my courses, for my students. But the conventional reading, what I used to do during my childhood, teenage years, and even young adult years, I read a lot of books. Possibly hundreds and thousands of books. Now, I might be exaggerating. It might seem like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I actually come from a family that's very well read. Even a friend circle that's very well read. A lot of my friends, a lot of my family members, they read books till today, in fact, many of them. But I gave up. Along the way, I switched to online, so that's where I do most of my reading and for my educational purposes. So I still write. Now I write a lot. I've written a lot thanks to all that reading. But what I'm talking about is the reading that I did, a lot of stories. When I read as a child, as a teenager, I read a lot of stories. A lot of folk stories, folk tales as they are called. A lot of fables, a lot of stories with morals. A lot of stories from the West. Especially the UK, especially all the Scandinavian belt and all that. All the books that could be translated in English or were available in English, and whatever we got our hands on in India, I read. And also a lot of stories from our country. And most of the stories from the West, at least, even the US, most of those writers, most of those stories that I read in the hundreds and thousands, they were all talked about kind people. A majority of the people that were depicted in those stories were compassionate, were kind, were giving, were generous, were nice people. That again and again you came across stories that told that other people were kind, human beings were kind. They were not racist, they did not discriminate, they did not like people who discriminated. They were kind, generous, loving, supportive people. Here when this person yelled out sanctuary, there was nobody who was kind or supportive. It was a blank refusal of that sanctuary. So that is a great reflection of the world we live in today. So earlier you had all these great stories from the West which inspired people like me. They said, wow, I love this part of the world where all these kind, humble, down-to-earth, loving, supportive people live. You can have a great life in those countries. And many of my family members and friends who are well-read and read books from those countries in English, they actually went to those countries. And today they are regretting it. Most of them have come back. So, it's like me, for instance. I worked abroad today. I'm back in India and I'm loving it. I'm very grateful that I came back. But the fact is, that's how the world was, has changed. All these wars, all this hatred, all this animosity has made the West like a hellhole. It's literally like a shithole, like a hellhole. And it's really, really sad that it's become that way. It's really, really sad. So this song kind of talks about all that. How sad, what a shithole UK has become, US has become, Germany, all those countries which were major parts of the World War II especially, and even after that mingling in everybody's affairs till today. All those countries, the people are dying of Alzheimer's like no man's business. A disease which is purely God's punishment on the people of that country. And it's funny that they don't really see it even now. They're not mending their ways even now. They're still poking their nose in everyone's affairs. They're not minding their own business. They don't even have money after robbing the whole world, literally. UK robbing the whole world for over a century and a half. Today themselves are in debt. Probably half their country is in debt, and they are literally dying of some disease or the other. But they still don't learn their lesson. They still are so proud. They refuse to apologize. They refuse to bend down and bow, to kneel. They refuse to do that. But what a shithole those countries have become. So how right the lyrics of this song are. Today it's 10 times worse than what it was just 2-3 decades, 4 decades ago when the song was probably written. That shows what a shithole the UK is, the shithole most of the West is, and the shithole the Americans are, and America is.
Oh, I have to talk about the saxophonist David Jackson. Isn't it him? When I read the credits, I went back again by listening to the song, and that's where Savio sneaked in, and he saw me looking for his name, David Jackson. And he had to.
How do I know what you were looking for?
You did
You
see.
were just coming
You did
in.
see. I came. I was looking at.
I
the
didn't
credits.
mention his name.
Yeah, but I am mentioning his name just because he took it. I like this man. I like the way he played this instrument. I've never heard someone do so much with saxophone, and for such a long time. This song is 10 seconds shy of 10 minutes. And the kind of saxophone playing throughout the song, and it's not usual saxophone play where it goes the romantic way. It was difficult and it was hard, and it also sounded a little bit distorted, but it was in the artistic way. And throughout, literally, it played on and on and on with other instruments. And it's not easy when you're doing something on the keyboard, when you're doing something on the guitar, and when you're actually doing it with a wind instrument. It takes a lot of stamina and energy because they are all different instruments. It's not as easy as moving your fingers. It actually takes energy from you and wind from you. So I mean, hands down to this person. He was phenomenal while listening to him. This was a unique song when it comes to instrument and playing of instrument. I like when Peter Hamill opened the song with the vocals, but because the instruments took such a aggressive avatar during the song, that he was pushed away. He was somewhere, whatever he was singing, I was least interested. I was only and only interested in the music. When Savio talks about compassion and kindness in all of those stories, now the things that we come across, books such as, there are some habits book and all, sometimes, it makes us wonder, because Savio has been a writer for a very long time and has been one of the most influential soft skills trainer in our country, at least, and in our part of the world, and a lot of in Bharat, and a lot of principles and things that he introduced to the students here, his students and people here, and they were very unique. They weren't there in the past, and it was a pure genius of him to have come up with those analogies and concepts and comparisons, and have spoken about them at length, and also have written about them, made videos, put on the same platform where we are both even today. And somehow magically some other person in the US also, or in the UK, thinks of the same thing, same example, same almost everything that was done without having the background in the kind of training and his background that he has, and they go on printing books or publishing books about the same thing. So it makes us doubt what exactly happened. Internet is bizarre, things are available for free for people to just plagiarize without even considering that it is somebody else's work and that person should get credit. But never mind. So I don't see that kindness in those parts anyway, and they weren't that kind, whether it was 70 years ago or whether it was a century ago or 2 centuries ago. I have not seen that kind of kindness. I have seen only greed and multiplying greed every passing day. So it has been a mammoth amount of greed that West has had for a very long time. Sometimes that greed has drowned them, and sometimes the greed has made them build a lot of wealth, and at the same time the greed is again drowning them. So it's a never-ending cycle.
Poison arrow that is killing them today.
Exactly.
They dip the arrows in the poison, but today those same arrows are hit on them by God.
There hasn't been
and they're all
kindness
dying.
and compassion.
Many of them, millions of them dying.
Recently,
UK is a tiny country with a tiny population compared to Bharat or Japan or most other crowded countries. But Still, the UK, people are dying
Too many problems.
over 1 million every year due to Alzheimer's alone. That's the poison arrows by God onto them, killing them. Alzheimer's is a new age disease and it's killing millions in the UK and many parts of Europe and of course million plus in America a year. A year I'm talking about. Millions dying a year of Alzheimer's, a new age disease. This disease is purely God's punishment on those people.
In the education system, one of a couple of things that are being focused upon a lot, and this is the Western and international curriculum that I'm talking about, is reflection. An ideal person or a learner who learns from international curriculum should be reflective. But I doubt if the same philosophy applies to the people who talk about that you should be reflective, but are you? Are you really doing what you are supposed to? Are you reflecting? I doubt they are.